probes, not like the rovers, but just the things they like stuck on Mars to go, get some readings kind of thing, like those very, very early ones. Freaky74, thank you for the follow, welcome to stream. And I do remember there was at some point a mix-up between units being used that resulted in it hitting way faster than it was supposed to. That was, I think, also the one that their plan for landing it was basically going to be like a javelin, where it just had to have like, some assistance, but it'd be a spike that hits the ground, and then the friction against the spike would work. But the guess, if I remember correctly, because the math there was confusion between different people using different units. It just hit so fast, you can almost like visualize in your head just this thing with all this expensive instrumentation with this giant metal spike through it, just go, thunk, plop. Now, that very well could be like rumor mill stuff that came out because, that they did have one of the probes fail, and it was during the phase it was landing on Mars. And it could be that, there's like an actual technical reason that was different than that, but, someone started the rumor and it stuck. So, we went to bed too early, but we're living with it, so deal with it. And for the record, those are all the, I mean, to be fair, pretty much every probe we've sent to Mars, for the most part, has been, we put it on Mars, well, when's it coming back? No. Because you have to then land a rocket large enough to put it back into space on Mars, and then get enough delta V to get it back into the Earth alignment to pull in. Right. It was probably like there's a whole bunch of technical stuff that ultimately came down to a units conversion kind of thing. And then just, is 30 degrees into it kind of deal is when it actually fails. But for laymen, it's like, look, we use different units. It's a problem. And I will say, anytime NASA runs into those types of mistakes, NASA is really good about going, okay, here's the deal. We put this 30 sets of policies in place to 6 times over redundantly make sure this never happens again. Because when you push a button and hundreds of millions of dollars goes off a pad by high yield explosives worth of fuel, you want to make sure you get it right. You don't shoot from the hip with that kind of thing. Like that was in software development, that was actually one of the things that we talk about, there is the concept of, having all of your code covered by tests. And that there are people who, their belief is literally every single line of code you write must have a test. And that's fairly impractical because there are stuff that you put code in, but it's actually done by something else, so you're not going to test someone else's code. That's impractical. It doesn't do you much good. But there are like different, I remember there's different tiers of code that they use for the space. And I remember talking to one of the devs out there who actually did, software for like Apollo 11 and all that. They're like, no, you don't understand. We test everything. And we test, and we test, and we test. If there's a line of code there, it gets tested, and we write up a manual of exactly what every single failure looks like. We test it all. Lydian says, I'm a TDD diehard, so I feel that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and especially when you're doing like proper TDD, where you write your test, you make a pass and a fail state, you make sure it fails, and then you write your code, like you really go for it, which, there's a lot of good places to do that. You get to those stuff where it's like borderline configuration stuff that you only half control the code, so you can't, like, there isn't a level of mocking and injection that you can do to make it clean or like an actual unit test, and it feels terrible because you're like, I want to test this, but my test would be meaningless because I'm testing someone else's code and I can't. Yeah, how do I TDD my Terraform scripts? I've only had to deal with Terraform at a meaningful level like once, where I was setting up some interactive courses to spin up the environment, and it was infuriating that I could not test any of it. And let me check up in chat because there's a lot of stuff talking about SpaceX and all that coming up. I mean, do we really need Mars landers back? We sent them there For info, yeah, Deonchuk, that's exactly the point. Like, they go there. Oh, there's I'm not gonna play it on stream because I don't know if it's DMCA phrase. There's actually this like really adorable song that is a content creator for music made. That's like a song for when we had the one rover that finally died. Like, had been on Mars for ridiculously longer than it was ever meant to last, and they finally, hit that point where it hadn't returned a signal long enough that they're like, all right, we're gonna stop calling. It's done. And it was like such a like warm, endearing song about like, the rover like taking to Mars and not coming back and all that. Howard says many people complain about SpaceX about how many rockets they've blown up and have no idea how many NAS. Oh yeah, that was one of the things I liked back during. So if you ever been to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, which is a location that's right outside the Kennedy Space Center Visitor or Kennedy Space Center itself, they have this wonderful experience for the Apollo missions. And that is how it starts. So they're like, yep, we're trying to launch these rockets. Yep, we got this rocket. We're supposed to put human beings to go to the moon, pretty soon. And we're still just blowing up rocket after rocket trying to make this work. And, it was fascinating, like watching that, they're like, oh no, what do we do? And then, tragically with the Apollo rockets, they had a test flight. So it wasn't even like a real rocket launch that caught fire, and it ended up killing some crew and all that, like right before they're planning on doing like a proper launch. And they scrubbed the entire Apollo mission for a little while because they actually took what rockets they had left and took them apart like individually, piece by piece by piece, like serialized every single nut and bolt to figure out what happened that caused that launch to go, or that test to go bad. And it was just so ridiculous going over. It was amazing hearing the stories around that. Imagine the historic significance of having the first thing we ever made. They went to another planet and back. Oh yeah, that'd be huge. People still visit museums today? Absolutely. I like museums, honestly. Like museums, I very much enjoy a good museum. Aura says, yeah, one of the people who died in that capsule was from my hometown. Yeah. Like, and I will say, the Visitor Center Complex, they know how to pull on your heartstrings with some of that. Like, the violins come out and they start playing, you're like, please, stop. My feels, I know it's a tragedy, but please stop. I used to know such, because I had been involved out the Space Center way back in the day. Like, I won't say more, because don't dox yourself. But, it was very interesting working out there. Like, I used to be able to tell you how fast the Apollo 11 could empty Olympic-sized pools worth of rocket fuel. Like, just launching and just... The numbers are so cartoonishly large when you're dealing with stuff like the Apollo rockets that you're just like, what? How is that real? Something like, oh, and I'm not going to remember this correct. It's something like 13 Olympic-sized pools worth of, rocket fuel it could drain in something like 10 seconds or some absolutely absurd volume. And you're like trying to do the math, it's like, but how does the liquid even move that fast? Like, even compressed and everything. Like, that's a staggering amount of highly volatile fuel. Yeah, it could drain much faster. And then you'd have the, I do appreciate SpaceX coining the term where they're like, a rapid unscheduled disassembly, I think was the term for when a rocket goes pop. If you ever want to do, if you do actually ever want to learn a whole bunch of rocketry, a game that is actually really good for kind of getting your brain around like orbital mechanics and all that is Kerbal Space Program. Like, it's cartoony and all that, but it is actually amazing you know, you'll learn stuff in school, but being able to just like visualize it and then actually like put extra fuel in and that kind of stuff and add weight, it is amazing how fast you can learn about orbital mechanics. Like stuff that you'd read and you think you get, but then you can like actually see it and go, oh. I get it. I get what apogee is now. Thank you for the follow. OV Bismarck, welcome to the stream. And you also get like the fundamental problem with rocketry where for every additional pound you add to a rocket, you have to have that many more pounds of fuel. And so it's just the exponential growth a rocket must take to have a larger payload. And it's fascinating that like conceptually you could build a rocket that would have to have like 8 or 9 stages to it. And just like the first stage would only be to get it going like 10-20 miles per hour generally up, and then you drop the stage and then you pick up from there. Engine-rich combustion. I haven't heard that one before. That's pretty good. Sometimes the long way round is the faster. Oh yeah. Well, it's funny when you're talking about, you know, launching a rocket and all that and going, okay, well, if you go with the orbit of the Earth, or not the orbit, the rotation of the globe, like you have one entire set of math you have to deal with, but if you're trying to go against the rotation of the globe, it's a totally different set of math that the numbers get even more mind-boggling because you're trying to counteract, you know, you're trying to counteract the fact that the rocket's sitting on the Earth that is spinning at an absolutely absurd speed has to then compensate and go the other direction to fight it. So it's just more fuel consuming. Yep. And, our name says that's exactly why it's much harder to launch things towards the sun and instead of away from it. It's always funny also looking at some of the rocketry plans of like, okay, well, we're going to slingshot around this and slingshot around that, and you're just kind of staring at them going, wait. You're like pre-predicting how you're going to line up all this down to like the exact amounts of force you need to exactly how long you've got to burn to get all that. And just whatever. Yeah. The space elevator idea is like really fascinating. It always falls down to, well, here's the materials we have and here's how strong they are. How does this work? It's like, not well. The size the thing would have to be able to endure moving at those speeds when you're getting to the far out ranges, and all the air resistance against it, it gets weird. If Earth were, I believe, 2 times the mass, chemical rockets could not hit escape velocity. I'm curious about that. I mean, I would believe that the chemical rockets, as we know it now, maybe couldn't. We might just have to get far more dire on how they are, but people who are much smarter than me on it probably have already done the math. I'll have to catch up with Chad again once we do our same old we do every day. What are we doing tonight, Pinky? We are killing the zombies. Angel of the Blood says, NASA said about 5 years ago, $7 billion we could do it. The space elevator. I mean, when you think about the GDP of the country and how $7 billion is actually not that significant a portion of it, like, being able to easily pull things to and from space rapidly, like, to me, that is a sound investment. You know, barring if they had some, like... Oh yeah, I having been at the space, or 100% get it. Like, I find it hearing it's like, oh yeah, you know, NASA's gonna get only X number of $1 million this year. And you're going, but why? Like, how many amazing things have come from the Space Center? Like, jeez. So let's see. The greater... let me catch up. Da-da-da-da. The greater Danish... Or, sorry. Adrian Pine saying, but we have the materials right now to do the elevator from the moon, which is why lunar colonization is so pivotal for space programs. So, wait. So we were saying from the moon we can make a space elevator. Is that what I'm reading? How would that work? I'm probably misunderstanding. Yeah. Let's see. That's true, but the one of those projects really needs to be done correctly first go, since there won't be a second time. The Greater Danish said, Angel of the Dust says Musk is looking into it. RDM Prime says, we are constantly prioritizing things like tax cuts for Amazon. Yeah. I have lots of opinions on that. I'm not going to dig into that because that gets way too political. Wispeak says, until there is a commercial or industrial use of space, it's hard to find a reason to fund it. See, and that's the thing. Like, we talk about stuff like gold on Earth. That gold is a material that people want, or you have silver, or you have, uranium and that type. It's like, okay, great. Once we can actually get into space, you can just mine an asteroid and go, guess what? We now have more of this material than Earth started with. Gold has become effectively worthless because we just have it. Now, that's probably not a good example, but space mining could totally revolutionize stuff. Deantric says, lesser gravity and strain in the elevator can make it with the current items. Interesting. Arnie Tribe says, yes, Rual Storge, we could use Teflon and Kevlar ropes to make a lunar-based space elevator because of the lower surface gravity of the moon. On Earth requires stronger materials like carbon. Right. Oh, so you're talking about like using the space elevator as a launch platform. So we would get something to the moon and then use the moon to launch it out to wherever. So we would still have to get stuff to the moon. Is that my understanding? Cool. On board. Excellent. So the moon would effectively be our like rocket slingshot that's super efficient. But we still have the one breakpoint of getting it to the moon. Yep, I mean, it makes sense. The dirt on the moon has a lot of stuff that can be used for fuel also. Interesting. I actually have very little knowledge of the composition of the dirt on the moon. Like, I know we've pulled it, we've looked at it, we've analyzed it. Like, I know, because I've personally seen stuff taken from the moon in person in real life, but not like what meaningful usefulness it has. Lunar Regolith is amazing. Good to hear. Angel Dust, if you know the 40k lore, the moon would be to us what Mars was in the lore. Okay. Nice. Oh. RDM saying the moon also has significant deposits of water, which can be easily manufactured into fuel. Yep, good old hydrogen oxygen. Just like some of our soil is multi-layered treasure trove for life during eras, I'm guessing the moon had the same uncommon materials. Yeah, because I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to remember if I'm mixing up moons. If I remember correctly, the going theory right now of how our moon came to be was that Earth, while it's still like in its infancy, took some type of hard strike. That material got kind of jettisoned out into the orbit, and then eventually those collapsed into what would be the moon and Earth. And I could be mixing stuff up. And it could be that was the theory and a new theory has come out, because with these types of things, you know, you work with the science you have, you continue to hone and practice and learn, and as you learn, you update your science accordingly. That's just the scientific process. Westpeak says, while the moon is differentiated, the lunar surface is easily accessible to rare materials relatively shallow impact. The Earth got bonked by a glancing blow by another orbital body. Yep, okay. That's what I thought. Because I do know that not all planets, they're celestial orbiting objects like moons and all that, they're satellites, sorry. Technical terms. Their satellites not all came from the same thing. Like some of them, you know, their satellite came from another location that, you know, got caught in their gravity. Usually those ones that got like slungshot where it got caught in the gravity but then managed to find some kind of orbit. Usually they have really weird oblong orbits. That could have been bad. I didn't want to bump the alien. The zombie there, but you know, it's fine. We're facing a way that worked. I did like the, where people were talking about, you know, making the space elevator on the moon, where they're saying, you know, that's something you want to take the time to figure out very precisely before you start anything, because it is one of those projects that you may only get, like, one good chance to set up type deal. I did like from, I think the movie was Time Machine. Yeah, like one of the cruxes is he goes into the future and they're looking at colonizing the moon by effectively like blasting the moon hollow and then like filling it with more places to live. And then things not working out. Hey, Sweet Key, how's it going? Haven't seen you for a while. Let's see. Dionchek says the only problem with the greater impact theory is the math is still off, right? Like they can spin the orbit of the moon back, but it never touches Earth, just stupid close implying impact, correct? I have no idea. And actually, I'm going to drop a shout out for that Sweet Key. I don't know if you're still streaming these days, but yep, Grand Theft Auto RP. That was one of the people I used to play GTRP with on the TSRP server. Yep, still streaming TSRP. Excellent. So, if people are into GTRP, that Squeak Key is a fun person to check out. Well worth the checkout. We have quite a few people who pop in here who are from that point in time, like Moonwitch I RP'd with, that Sweet Key I RP'd with, A Short Sigh is someone I RP'd with. There's a whole bunch that lurk but don't really talk that much. Ripping Lotus is someone I RP'd with. Oh, gotcha. So you are, so you're working, like, high up at Pillbox these days? And for those who aren't aware, in GTRP, you know, Pillbox is the hospital. So when you're talking, like, RP servers, they do, like, actually RP as if you know, you take an injury, you don't just walk away. It's not GTA where you wake up at the hospital, everything's fine, you walk out the door. You know, your character... I don't want to drop them on the ground. Your character is injured, you're expected to, you know, like, play it out as if, you know, you actually broke your leg or you took a gunshot or whatever is appropriate. I actually found the times that I did medical RP, which was extremely rare on my character, because as you can probably imagine from how slow, methodical, and careful I am with my gameplay in Project Zomboid, and my character was not a reckless person, that my RP was the same. So I am proud to say, after the many months that I RP'd, my character never once had to go to Pillbox for himself. as far as like an actual thing. I did go once or twice where my character technically took damage. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna play this out. My character like screwed up their ankle or whatever. But the rules on the server were, if your character is downed, you get no choice. You're going to the hospital. Gotcha. My two were, oh, what were the two? Oh, one of them was I went to climb on a ladder, and if anyone's climbed up and down ladders in GTA, you'll find that they are, like, the worst for actually climbing down on. So I definitely took a fall off a ladder where my character lost the teeniest, tiniest bit of health, and there was, like, the teeniest, tiniest bit of blood. And so I'm like, alright, yeah, we torqued her ankle. Let's go to Pillbox. Because I actually enjoyed the medical RP. And I think most of the doctors I went to and I ran into in the RP enjoyed it because at the time on the server there was lots of problems with, you know, it was like right before they put out a statement basically saying, hey, you know, criminal and police officers, like, you have to actually, like, engage in this medical RP. Stop making this horrible. So, like, it did that, and then there was one time I was, so, while my character was very cautious, for my own personal enjoyment of the game when things were slow on the server, I made my character have a bit of a lead foot. Like, he would drive perfectly safely when people were in the car with him, but when he was out kind of on the dirt roads by himself, you know, gotta go fast. And I had one time where I slammed into a concrete barricade, and it was the same thing where, like, the health just moved the teeniest, tiniest tick down, but, like, there was, like, blood on the windshield, so I'm like, yep, nope, I'm taking it as, we just smashed our head on the window and cut ourselves a little. Because I always felt like, especially on top for the people doing, like, the medical RP on the server and everything, like, half the time they were dealing with, like, oh, this person got run over by a car 6 times or shot twice in the head and all these real extreme things. I'm like, you know, they probably just want something not that extreme. Like, here, let me just give them, I got a boo-boo on my toesies. Yeah, so I like to give them just some fun little stuff, and that's still, you know, because of RP and all that, they'll be like, okay, well, let's do an X-ray, and you go in and say, okay, you know, hold your breath, do all that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed playing patient. Yeah, that's exactly what I figured, because like, one of the other characters that, so in character, Marcus's best friend was, like, I had a couple super close friends, like, he had Elle, that was one of them. He had Brooke, was, like, another one of Marcus's very, like, super close friends. You laugh, Whistlebeak, but, there was, for anyone who's familiar with the YouTube person, Minion777, so Wade, so, like, Brooke is now the head of medical at the hospital? Okay. I was not aware of that. But yeah, so those who are familiar with Minion777/Wade, so, you know, Markiplier Wade, he actually was on the server with us that we would RP. Like, my character did an interview of Minion's character at one point, which was not planned. I had actually expected to interview someone totally else, and they're like, no, here, go talk to Norm, which was Wade's character. That was a bit intimidating, because you suddenly realize you're talking to someone who has, like, 2,000 eyeballs watching them. And you're like, this isn't exactly what I had planned for my Sunday, but I guess we're here now. But, so it was fun, but what I was going with this is, there was a situation where someone had made a character that looks like an alien, and just as a gag, you know, Wade was like, oh yeah, like, I'm just gonna pretend my character, like, got bitten on the arm or whatever by the alien. and it became this whole thing that like the whole server just basically shut down like there was some type of like alien plague or whatever. And this is all before COVID or any of that. At least I believe it was. Like it became this whole thing. It was pretty funny. But yeah, so when I'm talking about all these people, we were all in the same server as Wade and Minion, so a lot of us have had interactions with them. I liked my interactions with Norm, who is Wade's character. It was always fun. There wasn't many of them because I actually, to a certain extent, tried to avoid the super duper popular streamers. Not in a point that I'd like go out of my way to get away from them because that would be considered meta, which is against the rules. Yeah, and I had heard that Wade had effectively left TSRP. As it like there was a bunch of big name streamers, well, a bunch of the bigger names on the servers had eventually moved away. It makes sense. Like streaming kind of forces you, if you want to grow, to move to wherever, not whatever the hot thing is. You don't have to go quite that far, but to mix it up a little bit. So like if he were to keep RPing, he'd probably have to find a different character. And plus, being on the server, I'm sure there's so many fans that had gotten on the server that were just like seeking him out whenever they got the chance. And that poor group, like every time they would do anything, the latest serial killer or criminal or whatever was trying to get involved with them. Like it wouldn't be surprised if like a whole bunch of the people had gotten banned that we never heard about. Yeah, Buffalo Prime's still on there. Yeah, and there's a few characters both on the TSRP server as well as others. Like I used to. So at first when I saw GTRP, I was like, I have zero interest in any of this. Like, this is I don't get what people are into it. And then I actually ran into someone who was starting a character from scratch at the very beginning that never had anything. It was it was just I was watching one stream, they raided, and I ended up on this other stream when this character was first starting. And I wish I could remember who it was. I don't think it was Buffalo Prime. It may have been Bird. It doesn't matter. But either way, like they raided someone who's doing GTRP, and as well as things as like I can't remember if it was like doing dishes or whatever, like didn't really have hands free to change anything, so I'm like, whatever. And started to get kind of invested in the character, going, hey, this is actually fun. And so I actually like applied to the server because I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a go. Worst case, if I don't like it, I just stop playing. And I had a good time for a good while. And then Wade and a whole bunch of others were on the server. I hadn't realized that. And it was just fun to be on there and do that for a good while. Like I had a blast. I don't think I'd do it again. Like I think I'm done doing hard RP, but it was fun. I am glad for the purposes of the channel I stopped doing GTRP. Like GTRP is very, very hot on Twitch, but for what I wanted the channel to be, it's basically non-compatible. They're totally different vibes. Hey, don't two-hand push. No one ever wants a two-hand push. And like when I last played, I actually fully intended to go back up from time to time, just hop on for an hour or two, and I did that once or twice. But with as fast as the server moves, I came to the realization it's either you play GTRP or you don't play GTRP. There's no in between. Because otherwise you get back and you spend the whole time with people trying to catch you up on what's going on in the city. And you can't have any new stories because you're just playing catch up. Yeah. Okay, so we're getting both drowsy and exerted, so I'm going to need to go back to sleep with this. I just had Whistlebeak redeemed a hydrate, and I'm out of hydrate, so give me a second to remedy that. I'm going to kill my mic so I don't blast you with chair rolling around. I'll be right back. Okay. Yeah, no, I could see that. Like I caught Kay streaming a couple times, who was one of the doctors at Pillbox. But yeah, no, RP is super time consuming. I'll speak saying yeah, don't have the will to play a game that takes just so much time to keep up with. Yeah, no, it's 100%. Like in GTRP, for people who do like relationship RP and that kind of stuff, like your relationships move at like Mach 10 because of the pressures of the city. Like in real life, you might date someone for a good couple weeks to a couple months and think, hey, you know what, maybe there's something that like maybe this could be a permanent thing like that. You might get at that point, like genuinely thinking about it. And then like GTRP is like, no, you're facing life and death at all possible things. It's not actually life and death, but to your character it can be life and death. And it's just constantly like stuff happening. So everything just goes so fast. Which also makes sense because if it did take, literal months and years for that kind of stuff to happen in RP, it just wouldn't happen because people come and go from the server faster than that. But it gets really weird because of that kind of thing. And like I had actually never planned for my character to RP a relationship because I had actually designed my character's backstory, which I won't go into, is just super depressing stuff. I'd actually given him a backstory as an out if someone tried to romance my character. But just the way RP evolved, that happened anyway. Because, like, the baggage he was carrying, as it were, got sorted out. And when it did, I'm like, I actually don't really have a good excuse why my character wouldn't do this. And so he had actually been in a relationship for a long time, which is one of those things that, like, when that was happening, like, I was, like, very quickly, like, talking about it, because, like, okay, here's the deal. Like, I need to talk to you about this thing before anything comes of it, because, like, if this is not comfortable zone, we are, like, I will make it not happen. Like, even if it breaks what my character would do, I will come up with some excuse for it. It was fun. It was weird. The big thing with that sort of stuff is you communicate with anyone you are RPing with, because it's really bad form. Just be like, okay, our character's a day. It's like, we need to talk about this off stream of like what are the boundaries, what are the limits, all that stuff. Respect each other, all that kind of stuff. Communication is key. Owispik said, play games like EVE Online, WoW, Guild Wars, and Envoy. I know just about how much they can gnaw on your time. Absolutely. Okay, that Sweet K says, that was the same for my character's boyfriend. Give me a moment. We're never planning having a relationship, but we talked outside the game and decided to get our characters together so we didn't have to deal with everyone pressuring them on the server. They were good friends to begin with, so now they're just good friends that live together. Yeah. I still, like, at one point I actually did go through, because, the feeling of my channel has changed dramatically since I was RPing. And so there's a common thing that happens on Twitch where you raid someone else and then sometimes they'll play clips from your channel. And I had some clips that came up from GTRP that were like super cringe. Like by comparison to what the channel was. Not in a bad way, it's just like, oh, this is like the opposite feel of what my channel is. And so I did actually clean out quite a few of the like really, really old RP clips, but I did keep some of the ones I really liked. And one of the clips was just oh, I'm blanking on the character's name. Younger character, very high energy, also helped out at Pillbox. always getting hurt, always in trouble. Um, that when you were moving your houses, we emptied Adder. We emptied your fridge. I still love, and I've kept that clip of him like going in the fridge. Is this? He's going, what is this? There's so much food. What's happening? I just love how like broken his brain was trying to process just the absurd amount of food you had in that fridge. Which, for context, for people who are watching, it's kind of like if you've seen like how much food we put like in the ice cooler in there, like in here. Like imagine that you're trying to represent like an actual real life situation, except all of that is like actually in a fridge. Like you go to someone's house, you open it up, and there actually is 500 things of cabbage in the fridge. Like that's how full that fridge was, and it was hilarious. I loved RPing with Adder at times because that person just got like so over the top with everything, and I loved every bit of it. Like that was there was a number of times the player behind that character was like, "Hey, like if my character gets annoying, just let me know and I'll either tone it down or we can like go someplace else or like something like that." I'm like, "No, never change. You're not allowed to change."